Hello and welcome to Inside Music, episode number 66. I'm your host, James Shotwell, and on this episode of the podcast, I'm talking with my good pal, Brian Logan Dales, vocalist and songwriter for the Somerset. Now, a year ago, if I had tried to do this exact same podcast, it was very likely I would have gotten a no, not because Brian wasn't available, but because the future of the Somerset was up in the air. Yes, just a year ago, even less if you really, when you get down to the nitty-gritty details, the Somerset were not sure if they wanted to continue on as a band. They had spent the last couple of months being on vacation, seeing the world, and attempting to start piecing together ideas for a new album, but nothing had really clicked in a way that made them feel like, yes, we absolutely have to continue. And then Brian wrote this song, Figure Me Out. And if you're a fan of the Somerset, you've already heard it. And if not, you'll probably hear a little bit of it here in this episode. But as soon as Brian wrote this song, he and the rest of the band started to feel like there was more to their story. There was something more they needed to share with the world. And the result of those conversations and all that work and thought and concentration and everything they've done up to this point is Stories for Monday, an eclectic and infectious and incredibly catchy collection of pop rock songs that not only give you exactly what you expect from the Somerset, but push the band forward in ways that you would never have thought possible. Brian and I talk about everything in this conversation. We talk about the meeting where the band decided their fate. We talk about the feelings he had going into it and coming out of it. We talk about where he's at now as a songwriter. We talk about his foray into writing songs for other people and how some of that material actually ended up being on Stories for Monday. We talk about everything that's been happening in the life of the Somerset over the past 2 years, and it is thrilling. I never thought I'd have a chance to interview Brian, especially in this kind of setting, but here we are, and it's all thanks to you, the listeners. Before we get to the podcast, I do need to tell you about our sponsor. This episode of Inside Music, just like every episode of Inside Music, is only made possible by Holix, the music industry's #1 digital promotional distribution system. And what that means is that Holix works with record labels, managers, publicists, and independent artists all over the world to keep new music free of piracy. If leaks do occur, Holix has state-of-the-art tools in place that can not only stop the spread of files online, but also track down those responsible. For more information on Holix and access to a free 30-day trial, visit holix.com. That's HAULIX.com. I also want to shout out our podcast because we have a Twitter account, and it's one that you need to follow, at Inside Music Pod. That's at Inside Music POD. You can send us questions, you can send us suggestions, and you'll find out a whole bunch of news about the show. You'll know who's coming on before their episode airs, what we're going to talk about, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So please follow and interact with us on there. Now I'm going to play a little bit of music from the new Somerset album, which again hits stores this Friday, April 1st, and is called Stories for Monday. And then we're going to get to the show. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy this conversation. And yeah, make sure you come back next week.
I'm a bit too pop for the punk kids, but I'm too punk for the pop kids. I don't know just where I fit in, 'cause when I open my mouth I know nobody's listening to the words of a prophet who still can't turn a profit, 'cause I don't fit in with the in crowd, but I'm too Hollywood to go back to my hometown, 'cause they think that I'm famous.
Sounds good.
How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing good. Just another Monday morning.
Do you have any stories for Monday?
Not a ton from this weekend. This weekend was pretty low-key. We played a show in Missouri. We played a college show in Missouri on Thursday night, and then came home Friday, and I haven't really done anything for the last couple of days except work on more music. So,
Are you somebody that's constantly writing new stuff?
yes and no. I used to always be, and then with this record was very different because this record kind of took us a long time. There was a long stretch where I wasn't making music at all. I was just kind of like stalemated a little bit. We came off the road after Warped Tour in August 2014 with the pressure of, okay, time to make another album. And I was kind of like, well, why? Like, I don't know how or
Okay.
what. Like, not like why make another album, but this kind of like proverbial, I don't know why I'm doing. I just kind of had like a little bit of a musical meltdown, if you will. Just putting a lot of pressure on myself about certain songs and just trying to like figure out how to grow and where to go next and like what kind of record to make. And it was taking a long time, and I ended up just spending the better part of a year just like traveling a lot, running away from making a record, and then just kind of stumbling upon new songs along the way. But then this weird thing happened where now we've written I powered through, wrote a lot of songs. We made a record. I'm very proud of it, and now I can't stop making new songs. So it's almost as if I just want to put another record out right when this record comes out.
Funny how that works.
Yeah, because now I've got a whole nother batch of a dozen songs. So
Oh yeah. Well, I mean that's good news for like everyone except for your recording schedule.
it's pretty much good news. Yeah, for everyone except for me. Now I have to wait on good. I hate waiting on good songs.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. So when did the creation process for this record start? Because I know that it kind of had some false starts. So when did it really begin?
Um, it's weird because I'm not. It was mostly just more of a conglomerate of false starts. I don't really know if there really was like a beginning point because we would kept trying to begin, but there's songs in this record like "Figure Me Out" that were written like at like a turning point toward the end. Like "Figure Me Out" was like the last song written for the record, which by the way it was still written in like July of last year. But um, but then there's songs in the record like "All In" "Jean Jacket," in "Wonder Years," which were songs I actually wrote like coming on 2.5, 3 years ago now, when we weren't even making a Somerset record. I was actually just in LA trying my hand at writing songs for other people and collaborating with other producers and like kind of pitching songs to through the network essentially. And those were a couple songs that I had like "Jean Jacket," for example, was a song that I had written with another artist in mind. And the minute I had that it was written, I was like, yeah, I know I'm gonna want to use this one later. Like, just the time will have to come.
And it made its way onto the album, which is awesome.
It's the best song on the album too. So
Interesting. We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there eventually.
I think it's my favorite song on the record. It's "Jean Jacket." So
I think mine's "All In." So.
oh, interesting. Okay, cool.
I don't know why. I think the best Somerset songs in my mind are the songs that feel very anthemic yet super personal, and that song has
Cool.
a good mixture.
Cool.
And plus, is that a Blink-182 reference at the end of "All In"?
That's dead. That's a Blink-182 reference.
It's surprising.
The only reason that song was a pitch for a pop punk, for like a young like pop punk band, and then I rewrote the verses for myself. That song was not originally going to be a Somerset song, but the bridge had the Blink-182 reference, and it was very great and catered for them. And then, when it came time to writing our version, I rewrote the verses, and then I was kind of working on the song with this guy named David Hodges. We were like, God, you know what? The bridge is yeah, I'm 26 now, but like, and I'm not quite as young as like the idea of that, but there's something really wonderfully nostalgic about singing about Blink-182 in the bridge, and honestly, maybe we should keep it. To me, "All In" was kind of this. What I also I think people are going to like about "All In" is it's probably the closest song on the record that's kind of an homage to our first album. It's probably the closest like old Somerset kind of song that we have, and I think it kind of bridges the gap between who we are now and what we were when we started.
I like that. I think that's a pretty good summary. I hadn't really considered it that way, but I see it now. I just thought it was a fun song. I mean, I think the entire album's super fun, but that's the song that that first listen, I was like, I gotta hear this one again.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
I will say right now, we're right off the top, that I think that this is your best album.
Woo!
And
Awesome.
I used to say that about Legendary, so I think that's the goal, I guess, to keep releasing your best album.
Well, that makes me feel good because like there was a long period of time where I wasn't sure how to make a record for me better than Legendary, and that was kind of the plan. And now, so the next one's going to be hard too, because now I'm just going to sit here on the next record and be like, well, how do I beat Stories from Monday?
That's a good problem to have.
It's the problem I want to have every time.
So I read a quote where you said that when you wrote "Figure Me Out," it made all the other songs make sense in the context of the album. Why do you feel that is?
So I guess with that, we the songs of the record had been there was a very disjointed, I guess, schedule of time, or disjointed timeline of when the songs were written. Like there were songs like "Jean Jacket" that were written 2.5 years ago. There were songs like "The Night Is Young" that were written by accident in New York, when I wasn't planning on writing. There were songs that were written on like the many trips I made to Mexico over the course of like 7 or 8 months after we were on tour for like 17 straight months, and I just was fried and was just like going on vacation all the time. But there were all these songs that were written in all sorts of different places, and like some were like like songwriting sessions I'd set up. Some kind of were just songs that happened by accident, and they all had this thing about them. They all had these things that was connecting them, but couldn't quite like. It wasn't so much that the songs were disconnected before Figure Me Out, as much as it was me writing Figure Me Out to understand how the other songs were connected. It was right there in front of me. I just didn't quite see it, that these were all these songs that were kind of about the end of something and the beginning of something else. I think Figure Me Out was the song that helped me understand the other ones. It wasn't so much that Figure Me Out changed them as much as it was I was able to like see everything clearer.
That makes sense. And I do feel having it at the top of the album kind of lays that out. Like that's what we're going to do for the next, 45 minutes or whatever.
The minute Figure Me Out was written, we knew it was the first song. So.
Okay. And now I want to ask about something so I asked Twitter, I was like, if we do this podcast with Brian, what's the first thing you want me to ask? And I got to tell you, like 4 people said, how many times can he reference Bruce Springsteen in one album?
Okay, so.
And I feel like I want to know more about why that has become such a theme in your music. And I'd like to hear the story about, you talk about it, Figure Me Out, the first time you hear that Bruce Springsteen. Can you kind of take us back to that moment in your life?
Yes. Well, for starters, there's more Springsteen references on the record than I think people would even catch.
There are.
There's like just mini ones all over the place. But I think it's mostly in this record. Like, yeah, I reference it on Jukebox in the last record, but like this record, I think this record stemmed a lot from like going back to like my childhood and remembering what I've always thought was great. And I'm such a huge Springsteen fan, and that stems from my dad, I guess from both my parents. My parents weren't like don't play music, don't really have any musical talents, but they're like really fantastic. They have great taste and are really great music fans. My dad is just a diehard Springsteen fan. So, I mean, I remember being 2 years old, barely being able to, like 2 or 3 years old, being barely able to walk, and I'd be at like Springsteen concerts in Detroit with my parents, and I had this little this silver plastic guitar, and I'd run up and down the aisles and like put on a sideshow for the people watching the Springsteen show. I knew every word, and I would be like rocking out along with him. And like, it was like, and to the point where like there was one show when I was very young where he noticed and had called me and like kind of acknowledged it from stage one time, of this little young kid who would just run around with a plastic guitar who just wanted to be him. And then, I mean, as I got older, the Springsteen-ness kind of went away, like through some of my teenage years. Like I started listening to like a lot of punk music and etc. But like eventually it always just kind of came back around to that. And I think this record was kind of about remembering and always kind of chasing what I've always thought was great. And I think like Figure Me Out like was kind of just a course history of my life that took me back to the basement at my parents' house in Michigan, where I would just like sit and listen to Born to Run with my dad, and I was like 3 years old. And for some reason, that song was just the most adventurous thing in the world to me then, and all of a sudden, it is to me again now.
I've always noticed that theme in your music, and when I heard the multiple references on Stories for Monday, I was like, I love this. I love this because it makes the music feel more personal. I feel like I know a little bit more about you, because especially the Thunder Road reference on another song where you're like listening to Thunder Road. It's a nice marketing campaign for Bruce to a new generation, because I feel like it tells us more about why you write the way you do because of your references.
And that's another good point. Is I actually read, I don't remember where, but I read an interesting article about Bruce talking about how he was on his 4th generation of fans. Like, I'm actually going to go to his show in a couple days from now. I guess when this is out, I will have already gone. But I mean, Bruce, like my dad and my brother just went to a Bruce show in Phoenix the other day, and like there's articles about him talking about how he's on his 4th generations of fans, and there's 20 somethings who are going to Springsteen shows again, because like that's just they're catching it for the first time. Like they have dove into the Springsteen catalog, and it's like a whole new generation of fans for him. And I wonder if that's what keeps him so young, because he's 67 and he's playing for like 3.5 hours a night. So maybe there's something to be said about that.
Is your long-term goal to try to have that success? Just tap into a piece of it, right? Just like 5%.
Yeah, give me 10% of what he's done, and I'm happy.
You're happy.
I just like I don't know, but I definitely know I have that itch. I want to be that. I want to. I know I've watched it with a lot of like friends and peers in my music community who by 26, 27, they've always I've seen bands who like saw like the end game, and like by 27, 28, we're like, yeah, well, that was fun, we don't want to tour anymore, time to like go start our real lives. And it's just never been like that for me. I think I've have that touring itch where I kind of want to tour till I'm 60 years old. um and that's kind of just like I don't really see any other way.
What reminds me the most about Springsteen when I listen, especially to this album in particular, is I feel like every song is very intentionally painting a picture of a moment. Like you're in a story as opposed to,
Yeah,
it's just something fun to sing along with. Like Bruce likes to put you in a scenario and be
yeah,
like,
absolutely.
yeah,
And there's something about, I guess, like there was a page I definitely took from his book about track listing and like making sure like the sequencing was very even though we live in a generation that is, as John Mayer called it, the skip forward generation, where the track listing like in sequencing like hardly matters to a lot of people because people are just listening to these things one song at a time or skipping through songs they don't like. But to the small group of people out there who might matter to, I want to make sure the sequencing in this record was perfect and made sense, because to me, like this whole record was kind of this journey of between where we were 3 years ago and where we are now, and I wanted the record to kind of like feel like an introduction with "Figure Me Out" and then feel like a to be continued at the end of "Wasted."
and I think you get that impression. I feel like when the party ends is almost like a finale, and then Wasted is like a post credits that kind of
Exactly. I
teases.
actually I agree with that even more. That's an even better way to put it. To me, when the party ends was absolutely kind of the finale, and it's one of my favorite songs we've ever done. Um,
Okay. Okay.
and I'm super super stoked on how when the party ends turned out. And yeah, "Wasted" to me is this kind of like, yeah, I guess a post credit like end credits song.
It's the kind of song that if the album ended with "When the Party Ends," you'd be happy, but then you hear "Wasted" and you're like, oh, there's more to come. Like I want
Yeah,
more.
yeah,
And apparently you have 12. You have some songs already written. So,
yeah. I got some more songs.
I guess we should talk about. I guess the big story when this album was first announced, the big story was that it almost didn't happen, or at least the band didn't make it to this point.
Yeah.
So, can we go in? Can you kind of put us as a fly on the wall? In was it like one sit down chat? Was it numerous chats?
Um,
What happened?
it was mostly one sit down chat. So it was no secret for us that like we were very disjointed while making this record. There's a lot of apathy for a while, and like we just kind of we were just lost. We just like didn't really know where we were going. We had all these songs. This was about a month or so after "Figure Me Out" was written, and I wrote "Figure Me Out" and thought like, oh man, like this is a major turning point. But then flash forward 2 months later, so it was September of last year. We were sitting down at this kind of bar restaurant in our neighborhood, and we were getting together to talk about. I think at the time we were talking about releasing a song back then, and then we were talking about this going on this co-headlining tour that we just really didn't want to do. And I think everyone was a little discouraged and not that excited. Everyone was on different pages, and I was like, for a lot of this album process, like, so with Legendary. Sorry, this story has just been super disjointed the
Oh,
entire
that's
time.
fine. Don't
I'm,
even worry.
I think I'm still trying to put it together how it happened. But with Legendary, we with that whole album process, we kind of got we got a small little taste of the sweet life and some of the finer things, and like had some songs get a little bit of play on the radio, and we played the iHeartRadio Festival, and we saw a door was open to this whole different world. Um, and that we got to play in for a little while, but we didn't quite get to stay as long as we would have liked to, which was fine because it made me hungrier than ever. But then when it came to starting to make this record, I was approaching it the wrong way. I just kind of kept thinking, oh, well, we need a bigger and better song. Like there's a single that we're missing. Like we're always just kind of had convinced myself that we were missing one song the entire time. And I'm not sure I would have ever let myself believe that we had the song if this fateful meeting in September about us breaking up didn't happen. So we get together. We're kind of discouraged, and we're not really sure like where we stand in a record, because we thought Figure Me Out would be a huge turning point, but then we were like, okay, well, we need to find. We're still missing a single. We need to find like a producer to make the record with, etc. And we just didn't. We were just like not. We just didn't have. We just didn't quite have it. And we sat down. We started talking about how we didn't really want to do the tour we were about to do, and then one thing led to another, and the conversation opened up about how maybe we had run our course, and everyone was kind of on the same page of like just like totally lost in the air, like not really like. We just thought maybe that the solution was to just make the record, do it ourselves, put it out there for our fans, announce it as our last album, and then like try some other things for a little while. And that obviously didn't stick because we are still here.
Yeah.
But why that was so great for us is because it finally, mostly for me, allowed me to let my guard down. I took all the pressure off. I wasn't worried about writing some big single anymore. I wasn't worried about like finding someone to produce the record, somebody to produce the record. We let John and Steven produce the record themselves, and they did an unbelievable job. And what's so wonderful about making a record yourselves is that it doesn't sound like anybody else. It literally just sounds like the Somerset in its truest form, because that's what it is. It's just we made the sounds of this record ourselves. So we made this record with the intention that it would be the last one. We just like let our worries go and and just let our guard down and made the record. And then we finished the record sometime around the beginning of December, maybe a little bit after Thanksgiving. We went from like having spent a year and a half with like kind of no destination to powering through the entire record in like 6 weeks. And then it was actually a conversation with John that really opened my eyes, where John was like, dude, I think your songs, like the songs are here. Like, if you've noticed, all of these songs kind of sound like thematically, like they're about the end of something, or like that they're on the brink of something, like a new beginning. All these songs kind of have a lot of the songs have the same theme. I think that's what the angle of this record is this is a like kind of a farewell to innocence kind of record. So we make the record, we power through it. And then sometime beginning of December, we have a conversation with Josh Montgomery, our guitar player, who at the time wasn't really playing in the band. He was actually back in school for a semester. And Josh, we had kind of played him, we had sent him what we had done with the record, and we played it for him. And he called us and he's like, guys, this record's the best work you've ever done. It would be a shame to limit any unforeseen opportunities and not see what could happen. So just, why are you guys doing this? And it was funny to have somebody who was obviously such a part of this for so long, who was now kind of on the outside of it with a fresh perspective, be able to look at us and be like, you guys are retarded. This record's amazing. What are you guys doing? And we kind of sat down and talked again and realized, like, you know what, maybe there's still something left here, and maybe we should just see what we're made of. And then we actually ended up just talking to Josh, and he was actually finishing his semester at school, had already consciously decided about not going back to take another one, and he kind of jumped back in and joined the band again. So for 6 months, he wasn't even in the band. And then now and then all of a sudden it was like, it's amazing how you go from kind of everything to nothing to everything so quickly, because we had such a rigorous touring schedule for Legendary, and then we kind of didn't really do anything for a year and a half. And then we decided I remember the phone call we had with our label when we told them we weren't going to break up anymore. And it was just, I was like telling somebody it was Christmas. And and then all of a sudden it went from nothing to everything. We were doing photo shoots and album layouts and everything. And now here we are, I think, stronger than ever, closer than we've been as individuals in a band in a long time. And we're excited about the record coming out and about going on tour and seeing what happens.
I can understand where you're coming from with, feeling like you need to go with a bigger song, because from like a critical standpoint, listening to you guys develop and develop with Legendary, it was this album that I felt really kind of put you at the top of your, like, I don't know, your niche within the alternative scene. But at the same time, whenever a band reaches that point, there's always the question of like, where do you go from here? Like, how do you go bigger than what you've just done? And how
Exactly.
do you cross over? Do you reinvent the wheel? I can't imagine how you kind of fight through that.
Yeah, of course. And I think what I learned over time is like you can't really you can't really predict, I guess, a big song or a hit song. Like, I mean, yeah, there's some stuff that scientifically works time and time again, but then you get songs like Take Me to Church or Royals by Lord or like We Are Young by Fun, and these are songs that just kind of like were artists that were so in tune with themselves that people had to start paying attention. And I think like you can't really predict. There's no like right or wrong way to do it. You just have to like make something that you really think is you and just really believe in it and then ride it out as hard as you can.
I have to agree. I mean, I feel like you're right. The theme of this album is definitely moving on, and kind of, I guess, a lot of the songs kind of tackle that indecisiveness about like what to do, especially All My
So,
Friends in particular.
hmm. There's a
Because
lot. Yeah, the record. There's a lot of kind of indecisiveness on the record. I think that also comes from the fact that like I think what I also love about calling the record Stories from Monday, and we've had this conversation as a band, is like it was weird to like we I mean I talked about how we were on the tour, we were touring off Legendary for the better part of 16 or 17 months, but in all actuality we have pretty much been touring or making a record in like repetitive cycles since we were 17, 18 years old. Like it's pretty much been nonstop for the last like 7 or 8 years. um this was the longest kind of break we had ever taken. And so I've lived in LA. We're a band from Arizona, but I've lived in LA for the last 4 years. I've been writing and working on other music, and I just have liked being out here. But right when we finished touring off Legendary, everyone else in the band moved out to LA with the idea that we'd be closer and it'd be easier to make this record. We ended up taking a break, and then in actuality, what happened is like I think everybody like this weird thing happened where we went from like everyone had to like really grow up overnight because it was almost as if the last like the 7 years prior or whatever was like this weird like time lapse window where like nothing kind of really existed, and then all of a sudden we were adults in LA and had like had like fast forwarded through 7 years of life, and all of a sudden like I think there was like a level of domesticality and like adulthood that happened to everyone really fast because we weren't touring or we weren't making a record, and it was like very much a normalcy that everyone was kind of getting used to. And I think this was a record to us that was kind of stapled our first break as a band. And I like to call it Stories from Monday because I think of Monday as like this new beginning. And and to me, it was as if the previous 7, 8 years of being a band was one long weekend. And now this is Monday and it's a new week and it's a new start over again.
oh, look at that double entendre you got going there.
It's a lot going on. It goes pretty deep as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, that's part of what I think I love about this record so much is because it still has the pop sound that people expect from the Somerset, but I feel like you do get a lot deeper. There are a lot more layers to a lot of the songs on this record.
Absolutely. I mean, to me, like a song like "Missing You" is one of the most fun songs on the record. As far as musically, it's very much like it's a definitely like a bass and drums groove, but it's also a song that's kind of bipolar. Like it's like on the surface, it's kind of about two people moving on, but you're kind of also questioning whether or not you really believe in that. And I really love the juxtaposition of a song that's musically and melodically very happy and lyrically very has like a different level of depth.
It's fun to catch yourself mid dance and be like, "Oh, am I supposed to be sad right now?"
Yeah, that's the best. That's the best thing in the world.
That's what you're looking for.
I think that was a page I took after hearing like "Some Nights" by Fun the first time. I was
Yeah.
like, oh my god, this song is triumphant and makes me want to like drink and have this great time. And then you kind of all of a sudden catch yourself listening to the lyrics and you're like, oh my god, this guy's pretty sad. Then I was like, this is fucking cool. And I think that was like, I mean, amongst many other songs over the course of music history, but I think I remember that moment the first time I heard that song.
Yeah, I remember hearing that song before. Yeah, when you hear that song before it blows up, you're like, "This is a really powerful song." And when it blows up, it's almost weird because you're like, "Do people understand how like sad part of it is?" It's
And
weird.
but I think I've learned what I've learned is I love that. Like I've heard that song. You hear like a it's one of those things you like it's amazing to see a song take on like a different culture, like a drinking culture, or like it comes on in a bar and everybody's like singing along because in that moment they're drunk and they're like in this euphoric kind of bar state singing along to the and it's like it's very much like that. But then it also you realize it's a kind of it's a pretty sad song, and that even takes me back to like Wonderwall is like the ultimate bar sing along, and
Yes.
that's like a really sad song.
Yeah.
Um, and like Mr. Jones by Counting Crows. I remember that song came on at a karaoke bar I was at like 6 months ago, and that's one of my favorite songs ever. But I was in this context where I was surrounded by people who were like drinking and like singing along to the song, and I was like, oh my god, this song is really sad, like really sad.
Yeah.
And I think I love that juxtaposition. I mean, Piano Man by Billy Joel is not really a happy song.
No.
And I think I love that. I think when a song takes on, when I love when a song becomes bigger than its own self.
Yeah, and I feel like I think that's part of what makes any of the best songs. That's what makes them work, is because it almost makes the medicine of having to face reality go down easier, because it kind of distracts you with something pretty, and then but it's like, by the way, we're all gonna die and things are hard.
Of course, and also, like, and to some degree, whether people like want to accept it or not, people majority of people resonate with the melody of something first. They can hum you something before they can quite make out what all the lyrics are. Um, and that's why I think a lot of those resonate to that degree. Is like even a drunk person can kind of know what's going on, can know what they're like, can kind of sing along.
Well, even "Don't Stop Believin'" is essentially a sad song with a
Oh yeah,
great hook.
pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. This is a whole different rabbit hole we've gone
Yeah,
down.
we've gone down like yeah. So the best songs
I
are
think
sad,
I'm
happy songs.
I'm gonna write a thesis about this.
I think you've written an album about it.
I have actually.
Oh man, what now from a songwriting perspective, you've been working on stuff for other people. How do you think trying to get out of like your own experiences in your own head to think for other bands, how has that shaped your own songwriting for this record?
Um, it's interesting because I think it was one of the at times it's been the best thing that's ever happened to me. At times it's also been like the worst thing that's ever happened to me. But because I've been writing songs like when we weren't touring, we were in LA, like as if it was like an actual job. Like I would like most of my friends are songwriters, and like I would get to I just for a while I was in a steady rotation of like 5 days a week. I'd get together with people and we'd write a song. Like that was it. You'd go in and you'd make something out of nothing, like it was a magic trick. And it was awesome. It was kind of for a while. It was like kind of going to this songwriting school of pop music where like you kind of learn all the tricks and you learn what really makes certain things work and why certain things don't. And you like you kind of learn so much about writing songs. And to some degree, that was always so great for me because it allowed me to like get like write music and take my head like out of it. Like it allowed me to like kind of let my guard down and write a song. Like songs like Jean Jacket were songs that were just I didn't realize how much of how much of me that song was until way later, because when we wrote it, we just powered through that song in like an hour and a half and just like we let it out and we let it go, and I wasn't overthinking any of it. But then sometimes on the other end of the spectrum, where that started to haunt me a little bit during this album process was that like for a while I felt like I knew all the rules to the playbook on how to write a song, but to some degree that playbook isn't necessarily the answer. And it was almost as if for a while on this record I needed like with Figure Me Out, I had to allow myself to forget everything I've learned over the course of the last couple of years and like go back to what it's like to be a teenager naive in my bedroom just writing out a song with no rules. Because like to some degree there are rules to make a perfectly crafted pop song, but then there's always exceptions to the rule. I think I just wanted to be the exception to the rule for a little while longer.
Yeah, I do think it's funny that you mentioned that about Jean Jacket, because when I hear that song, my first impression, I was like, oh, this is Somerset 101 for me. Like,
A
for me,
1,000%. But it wasn't written to be a Somerset song, and I didn't realize by not thinking so much about it, I didn't realize how much of myself I had put in it.
it's weird how that works, right?
That was a song I had written as a pitch for another group.
How many songs on the album are like that?
Only three.
No, let's see.
Wonder Years, Jean Jacket, and All In were songs that were like written before the Somerset record was even necessarily in like fruition. Like that was like not even those were songs that were written before the process had even technically begun.
So what was the last song to make the cut then?
Figure Me Out.
Figure Me Out was the very last one. And then you're
Yeah.
like, it's done.
Yeah, it was weird. Figure Me Out was the last one. Wrote a couple songs after Figure Me Out, but they didn't really fit. It's like they didn't fit in the same realm. Figure Me Out and Wasted were the last two, which is ironic because
Yeah.
they were the opposite ends of the spectrum. Wrote Wasted first, and then went on tour for a few weeks. Played Wasted on the tour, like it was an acoustic tour we did last year. I was not necessarily in a great headspace on the tour that we had done. Finished the tour in Tucson, Arizona, and called my mom and was just so discouraged that I was like, I'm coming to my parents live in Cape Creek, Arizona. I was like, I'm coming to the house. I'm going to stay for like a week or two. I don't really want to make any music right now. I don't really know what's going on. I just have no answers. And then one night in the middle of the night, kind of started writing Figure Me Out a cappella. Like I had like with almost the way a rapper would write verses. I had like kind of was fumbling around the I'm a bit too pop for the punk kids, kind of back and forth in my brain with no guitar or piano in my hand. Just kind of writing this verse, just like free form, just all these kind of opposites in a cathartic way of like figuring out who I am and who I've become. And it wasn't until I kind of sat down at the piano in my parents' house at like 1 something in the morning. My mom's trying to sleep. And I'd played the first chord, the first kind of piano chord in the I guess chorus or pre-chorus, and sang the I believe there's more to life than all my problems lyric. And all of a sudden the whole song made sense.
Mm. It's funny that you had to go home to write a song about not going home.
Yeah, it's a song about getting the hell away from there, but actually, I don't know. To some degree, it's also a song about not really being allowed to go back there.
Yeah.
Or not being accepted if I were to go back there.
Mm.
I had to write it there.
Well, I feel like anyone that kind of makes that jump, especially in the music and entertainment business, you make that jump to go to the big city or what have you to like further your career. Like there's something inside your brain that's like, no, you told everyone back there that you had to leave, so you can't go back there.
To some degree, it's not even that. I also think it's a small town in Arizona, and I go back there, and I think it's still this mindset that like the music industry is a very lucrative, very ultimately successful industry where if you made it, if you're still doing it at all, you've like kind of transcended to this mega level of success. And it's a very hard, very, very frugal industry right now. And I think like there's levels of kind of fraudulence that I think people maybe think about myself when I go back there, that like I think maybe I've led them on to think like at some points that I've just done better than I have.
Have you ever had, I mean, I'm sure you've had this conversation. I've been working in music for a long time now. Whenever I go home and I run into someone like from high school or that I knew before I got into music, they'll always be like, oh, so you must be making a ton of money now, or you must be.
That's always the first question to me. And I think that's the part that really like sours my taste a little bit. Is go home and they're always asking me how much, like, about like the money aspect first, which is weird to me because I just don't quite resonate.
Yeah.
That's always the first question. to some degree it's endearing because I think they want to make sure I'm doing okay. But to some degree it's also like, well, you don't actually give a fuck about what I'm doing.
True. It's the money question is weird because you don't know if it's like, are you doing okay, or if they're like, oh, so are you a big shot now? Are you too good for us because you make a ton of money?
It's a pretty convoluted question. I'm not really sure like what they mean by it. I don't know if they're. I think, which is why I just don't put myself in the situation where I'm asked that question anymore.
I
can never really tell if they're like looking out for me or if they think I'm too good for them. And I think that's what Figure Me Out is about to some degree.
I'm only like a year older than you, so I feel like I've also been in the last like 2 or 3 years of my life. I've also kind of gone through this thing where you realize that the kid who got you to where you are today, the kid that loved music and got you into music, that kid has to like evolve and mature, and you kind of have to stop and ask yourself, like you said, you look up and like 7 years have passed, and you're like, oh crap, who am I?
So 7 years passed out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I think that's what a lot of this record is about, is like how the hell did we get here? But yeah, for a lot of this record also I think is like kind of like retrospectively looking back and kind of asking that kid how he would feel about me right now.
What do you think his answer is?
He feels a little better about me today than he did a year ago.
That's all you can hope for, right?
I think he feels pretty good about the record. I think he's pretty thankful that I finished it.
Oh, well, that's good. Got to keep that inner child happy.
Yeah, I don't think that inner child. I think a year ago, I don't think that inner child liked me very much, and I think now he does.
I do try to. That's kind of how I try to keep myself in check. Is I'll be like, what would the guy who wanted to get to this point think of what I'm doing right now?
Yeah, it's a question I needed to ask myself more often.
I think it's a question everyone needs to ask themselves. That's something else that I love about this record is it does feel personal, but it's in that way where you kind of have to look in the mirror at yourself as you're singing along and be like, oh man, maybe I need to do some of these things.
Yeah.
I need to take into account who I am, why I'm doing the things I'm doing, who I surround myself with, and why.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, man. Well, let me ask you this. Is there something that you're aspiring to get out of this album other than, I want the album, you obviously want the album to be a success. You hope the fans like it. You hope you bring new people in. But, we kind of talked about how you got into your head about needing to go bigger and bigger, and then you kind of got away from that. So when you look at Stories for Monday and you think about potential success or potential for outcomes of the album, like what is it that you're hoping happens?
This is gonna sound like the craziest answer, but I just don't have any expectations anymore, and it's in the best way possible. I had all these expectations in the world, but they were weird. I was so caught up in kind of trying to play a singles game and have a big song on pop radio or whatever, and I'd love to obviously I'd love to have a big song or a big record, but I want it on my own terms. I'd love to I've always kind of in my brain, I've always had this daydream of the moment where I could be driving next to somebody, like a stranger, and stopped at a red light, and I'd hear my song on the radio in their car. And that's a weird thing I've always wanted. But I don't necessarily want that the same way I did a year ago. I just wanted to make a great record, and now there's no expectation really whatsoever. And I think it's hard to have expectations on a record that almost never happened.
I like that.
So now it's I've exceeded the expectations. The thing's fucking coming out. Unless the whole thing's an April Fool's joke because the record comes out on April 1st.
True.
Unless Fearless and Concord are just it's not going to come out. And maybe I wake up and it's some sort of weird Inception daydream or something. But the expectations have been succeeded because we're releasing it. Whatever happens after that is just dessert, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think that's what's really exciting is because I'm allowing anything to happen, and that's really cool. We released Figure Me Out. That was the first thing we put out back in January. And I didn't really realize until then that we hadn't really put out music in almost 3 years at the time. And we had been holding on to all this new art for so long, and then Figure Me Out came out and we put it out in the world, and I'd kind of forgotten what it felt like to get gratification from people who like what you do. And that was so exciting because Figure Me Out was obviously, like I said earlier, the kind of the most therapeutic or cathartic song I had ever written.
Yeah.
And then it came out, and people, and like it was had a kind of a unanimous praise I wasn't quite ready for. From fans of our band to peers, like I was getting phone calls and texts from guys in other bands that I've played with forever, or people I've looked up to who were like, "Hey, man, I resonate with that. That is really fucking cool. I'm so excited for you guys." And it took on this whole different level of gratification and like vindication that I like forgot about. And that was like a really exciting moment, because now the whole record's going to come out and I don't really know what to expect. But it's just exciting.
Well, it was exciting for me when I first heard Figure Me Out, because a lot of bands that kind of fall into that pop rock genre aren't the kind of bands you expect to address things like growing older and like the realities of what that is. And when I heard that, I was like, holy shit, like this is a guy that gets what it's like to be above 25 and still working primarily in a world that caters to teenagers.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing it's a weird thing to rationalize in your brain, and it's a thing that only so many people like understand, you know what I mean? And so when someone hits it in a song, it's like, holy crap, like finally someone says it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, kudos to you on that. I'm glad that the other people that you've gotten vindication from other artists, because I feel like that's something that not a lot some people are even afraid to address, because they feel like their audience is primarily younger than them, and so they don't know that they'll understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, and I think that was I think what I guess I mean more so by having peers and other friends like acknowledge the song or reach out about the song, was it kind of got me to that place that I was hoping to get to, which was, okay, people my age, people older than me, like I think they might they like what I'm doing now too, and that's cool. Because it's never been about just playing. I've never wanted to just be pigeonholed to playing to one group of people. It's like I want to make music that like my mother would listen to, but also like my neighbor's teenage daughter's school, like middle school class would listen to. Like I want to make music for everybody. I don't think like I think there's something to be said again about Bruce Springsteen being on his fourth generation of fans. I think I want to make music that I don't want to like, I've never quite understood the mindset of like trying to like really play to one demographic of people.
I get that, and you're right about Bruce. The reinvention of Bruce is one of the things that makes him so interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah, you never know what he's going to do next, but you're always ready to accept whatever that is.
Exactly.
While we're on the topic of Bruce, real quick, what is Born to Run the album you suggest people listen to first? Is that the one that you tell them to get into?
Yeah. I mean, there's just like it's quintessential. It's like
exactly.
So adventurous, and it's like this like it's so inviting and adventurous. To me, I think that's the first one. You could argue it on different ends of that coin of like maybe Born in the USA is a very pivotal album, but then there's also stuff like Nebraska that's like I would never tell someone to listen to Nebraska first, because it's an acoustic like album recorded on an 8-track in his kitchen. But man, if someone were to listen to Born to Run and then follow it up with Nebraska, they would be like, holy shit, this guy can do anything.
Yeah, true. Nebraska's my favorite one to recommend, but I'm with you where it's like it's not a proper introduction, because it definitely doesn't show you what everything he's about.
Yeah, it's not quite. It's the farthest from anything else he's really done, but
exactly,
it's because it's so bare. It's so much more like a Dylan record. But Nebraska's outside of Born to Run. Nebraska it's my favorite record of his.
Yeah, it's timeless. It's I mean, he has a few timeless records, but Nebraska is timeless in a way that records that sound like that usually aren't.
Yeah. It's so little. Like it's literally recorded on a small 8-track in like a kitchen of his home.
Yeah.
There was a time, by the way, on this record process back in like August where I was kind of so lost creatively. I went to Alaska for like 3 or 4 days alone. Like I flew to Alaska by myself on like a 48-hour notice because it was the only state I hadn't been to and I wanted to go. Flew to Alaska, went to Alaska by myself, listened to Nebraska the whole time, and somehow it gotten in my brain that I was just going to like maybe not finish a Somerset record and just make like a weird dark folk record. Then I'm glad I didn't. But
oh, that would have caught people by surprise.
Yeah, I just was so musically lost that I thought maybe the answer was to do something really, really dark and folky. I don't know. I never did. That was a mindset at one point.
You never know. You said you wanted to get to 60 and still be torn. You got like 30 plus years to get one of those out.
Mm-hmm.
You got time. All right, man.
It'll be 10 years before I make that record.
Well, I appreciate you taking all this time to talk to me. You guys do have a tour coming up as well, right?
Oh yeah, we're going on tour. Holy shit.
time for all that relaxation's about to end, and then it starts again.
We played 2 college shows in the last like month or so. We were playing about hour-long sets. We were playing like 12 or 13 songs. And we were pretty winded like after the hour-long set. Except we're going on tour and trying to play 90 minutes, 18 songs, 4 albums of material. So we're all like sitting here now like, guys, do we have to like go through boot camp for the next couple of weeks? Because like we need to get our tour shape back on.
Oh, I can't even imagine. Hey, yeah, how hard is that first hour back out on stage?
Ooh, the first hour of the first one was tough. We were like, I forgot how this is. And now we're trying to like play for, God, honestly, maybe it's trying to play 18, 19 songs a night. Like that could put us at like an hour 40. So we'll see.
Dang, that's, I like to hear that though, because again, like it's not all pop artists go for the big thing, but you guys have so much material, and I feel like every Somerset fan has their own album and like set of songs that are their favorite.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And that's what's been kind of fun is we have kind of different pockets of fans even within our own fans. We come to shows and we got people who love Everything's Fine, which is amazing to me. We got people who still really love Love Like This record made by a bunch of 18-year-olds who had no idea what they were doing. And then there's like a lot of Legendary fans.
Well, I mean, I think Legendary is going to be an album that people are talking about for quite a while. I don't know. It set a new standard in pop rock for me, and I feel like a lot of other people feel that way. So
thank you.
I think this album is better, but I think it's different. It's not quite as power pop as Legendary.
Not quite. It's not. I wanted to make sure this one was a little, I guess.
Is mature the word?
I don't. Mature, to some degree, mature is the word, but I also hate using mature, unfortunately, because I think so many people have used mature the wrong way that it kind of makes that word puts a bad taste in my mouth. Like, yeah, we've matured in this record. I think there's something maybe more emotional, maybe moodier about this record. It's still very fun, but there's something just a deeper about the record compared to our other ones. I think there's something very nostalgic about this record. And I think this record to me just kind of sounds like the way I want the end of Innocence to sound.
So what comes after the end of Innocence?
Couldn't fucking tell you.
Not yet.
Haven't figured that part out yet.
But it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah. I mean, I've gotten more songs. They're good. I think they're really good. I think I've just struck a chord on like a new batch of songs that might be the best ones that I've ever done. But
would you say they build on the ideas from Stories to Monday? Are they a little different sonically? What's happening with them?
They don't really have a shape sonically yet. They're just songs, which is exciting. Yeah. I think they just sound like the sequel to Stories from Monday. I think they just sound like whatever is supposed to happen next. They're older. I don't know. I got out of a relationship right around the time we finished the record, and I think like some of it stemmed from that. I think there's also songs that kind of almost feel like this kind of idea of having finally finished the record, and now it's like these songs about kind of just like there's like a new form of adventurous to these songs that are like kind of having accepted the fact that this record is done, and now these other things can exist.
Yeah, there is a strange almost 2.0 vibe to Stories from Monday, where it's like this is like the next step along the way.
Yeah.
While still being firmly rooted in everything that's come beforehand.
Yes.
Wow. I don't know how you strike that balance, sir, but well done.
Thank you.
So when does tour kick off?
Kicks off April 13th in Anaheim, California at House of Blues.
And you and I are seeing each other like a week after that here in Minnesota, which is nowhere near as cool as California.
Ah, yes, Minnesota. Where am I playing in Minnesota? Marcy?
Burnsville, Minnesota. Where?
What venue am I playing in Burnsville?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
I should know these things. I don't even know.
The Garage. It's called The Garage in Burnsville, Minnesota.
God, I've never played there. That's exciting.
Well, there you go. So I've never been there. I just moved here from Boston like a month ago. So
okay. What are you doing in Minnesota?
The company that I work for, Hollis, our headquarters are here. So
okay,
we just opened an office in downtown, and I had actually. So the reason that we're even doing this is because I also write for Substream on the side, and the critic that Substream has assigned to review the album like reached out to me one day and was like, "Have you heard this record?" And I was like, "No, it's early February, and they won't give it to me yet." And she was like, "You should have Brian on the show because you need to talk about this album." And I was like, "Okay." And I reached out to Heather, and she was like, "Yeah, let's make that happen."
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I'm happy to do it. This is definitely, I'm very grateful for interviews like this where we can just talk. So thank you for giving me one of these. I've been doing a lot of phoners recently. Some are better than others.
I can imagine.
I just like some are more conversational than others, and those feel good.
Yeah, that's the thing I try to strike, and I feel like, in my experience in covering a band and kind of the scene that you guys tend to roll in, there's a lot of interviews you end up doing that are kind of repetitive in a lot of natures, and I always want to know about the person behind the music as opposed to like, how do you write a song, or how's tour going, or
absolutely.
It's stuff like that. I want because I understand that at the end of the day, you're an artist just like anybody else, and maybe you make pop music, but that doesn't mean that like you're not as deep as say someone that writes considerably much more like indie music or whatever it happens to be. So I try to keep you out of that pigeonhole.
I mean, hey, I listen to as much indie rock as anybody, but sometimes indie is also just a synonym for shitty.
Yeah, it's if you don't get it, it's indie. That's kind of how it works.
Yeah, pretty much.
But yeah, man, I think Stories for Monday is great. I'm excited to hear people think it, and I agree with you. I did think when I saw the April 1st release date, I was like, is this a joke? Because they could just drop this album as a surprise at any point with an April 1st release date.
True, or we could just not drop it at all.
Just not do it. No, it exists. I've heard it. By the time this is out, the rest of the people will have heard it. And you think the best song is Jean Jacket, which I find interesting.
I think that's my favorite. I think that
right now.
That I like that one is. I've held on to that one for coming on 3 years now, and I think it's awesome to me that one has kind of fine-wined itself.
Do you think it'll get is that going to be the next song you guys release? Do you know what's coming out next?
It is. Well, so by the time when this is out, there will be there's a video coming out for that. There will be a song.
Oh wow.
By the time this is out, people will have heard that song and seen yet another music video for that song.
How is this? Did you guys just do 3 videos, or are there more on their way?
We did 3 videos for now. I'd love to do all with a gentleman named Daniel Carberry, who also we worked with on the Lightning in a Bottle video many years ago. Daniel and I were about the same age, and we click, and I really like making videos with him. By the time this is out, people will have seen the video, but I'll tell you that as we're talking, this video is very different than the other 2. And I think it's probably the coolest video. In my eyes, I think it's the coolest video we've ever made.
I just had that thought about Missing You, where I was like, I really like this video. I like the direction.
So that was, I guess just to kind of keep talking, but the Missing You video, I'm very proud of all the videos we've done so far. The Missing You video, visually and aesthetically, was something I was very proud of. That was something when we first sat down with the label after having finally finished the record, and we sat down and we talked about, okay, let's roll out the record. I think it's important to me to see how many songs we could release before the record came out and how many corresponding videos we could make with each song. I've been trying to keep up this idea of the first time someone hearing these songs before the record comes out, they're kind of seeing something at the same time. Because I think, as you were talking, I think in my eyes, a very cinematic kind of aspect to this record. I think it's very much kind of place and time.
Yeah.
So I wanted as many songs as we were allowed to kind of have a corresponding video, so that when people heard the song for the first time, they kind of got to see something with it. Figure Me Out. Figure Me Out. It was very important with Figure Me Out for people just to kind of see us as a band playing in a circle with a kind of a cool aesthetic, and kind of with the metaphor of I wanted the metaphor of that video to kind of be we're a band again, and we're just 5 people, and we're just going to play right here in a circle, and you're going to see us. I know it's been a while, and I think that that video was very much our way of saying, hey, we're back. with Missing You, that song to me has always been this kind of bipolar love song, kind of representing all the trials and tribulations of a handful of relationships I've been in. And I wanted that song visually to also kind of correspond with that. So there's these kind of projections of sunrises and sunsets and thunderstorms and rain and all this stuff, and a handful of different girls throughout the video. And I think, like, to me, it was kind of supposed to be this metaphor of the trials and tribulations of being in a relationship and the ups and downs. Jean Jacket video is very different. There's no performance. It's more of like a little 6-minute mini movie. And I think it's probably the most excited one I've made. It's very different.
That sounds awesome. It sounds, yeah, I like when bands skip away from the performance to do something a little bit more theatrical. So I dig that.
Yeah. So the Jean Jacket video is pretty much all narrative and no performance.
I can't wait to see it, man. Can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
I do kind of hope there's a video for All My Friends at one point, because I feel like that's going to be one of those summer anthems that kids are coming back to.
I'm very invested in making something that's really happened to me in the last like year and a half. I used to just like the art aspect of a record and the video aspect of a record never used to be quite as important to me as it has become in the last year and a half. I think I've just like spent a lot of the last year and a half kind of like studying and appreciating different other aspects of art and trying to get as much into that as I could. That's why I think it was like some of the artistic rollout and the layout and the album cover were much more just meticulously thought out this time than they have been in the past. And that also goes with the videos. I wanted to work with Daniel again on every video and like really go work on it hands-on together, the both of us, and kind of plan these videos out. I definitely have another idea for an All My Friends video that I'd love to make at some point. I'd hope it would see the light of day. I think it would be probably the goofiest video we've ever made, but I think I have an All My Friends video idea if it ever got to the point to make it.
All right. Well, then I'm fingers crossed on that front, man. All right. I'll let you go. I know I'm taking up like an hour of your time.
Oh, you're fine. I got nothing going on today.
I leave for South by Southwest in the morning, so all I have is like laundry.
Pretty much.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, I hope you have I wish you the best with this album. It comes out April 1st. People will hear this just before that. So if you haven't pre-ordered yet, you probably have like 36 hours to do so.
Yeah, 36 hours to pre-order.
Yeah, help them get those first week numbers.
Awesome.
All right, man. I'll see you in April here in Minnesota, and before then, just have a good time, man.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. I'll see you in Minnesota.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Yeah.